The morning steam rose from my battered aluminum pot like ghosts escaping hell, carrying with it the scent of cheap broth and wilted vegetables I'd salvaged from yesterday's market scraps. My fingers, cracked and stained from years of this work, stirred the contents mechanically while my mind drifted somewhere between exhaustion and that numb space where hope used to live. The street corner was mine by default, not choice. No one else wanted this patch of cracked pavement, where the industrial district bled into the forgotten neighborhoods, where factory workers with hollow eyes shuffled past at dawn, too tired to even acknowledge my existence. My food stall wasn't much, a rickety metal cart I'd welded together from discarded parts, a propane burner that coughed and sputtered, plastic stools that wobbled on uneven legs. But it was mine, the only thing in this world that belonged to me. I was invisible here, just another shadow among shadows, another body taking up space in a city that had no use for people like me. 23 years old, and I might as well have been 100. My reflection in the dented steel of my cart showed a stranger. Hair pulled back in a grease-stained bandana, skin weathered beyond my years, eyes that had learned not to expect anything good. The girl appeared 3 weeks ago. She couldn't have been more than 7, maybe 8. Hard to tell under all that dirt. She never spoke, just materialized each morning like a ghost, watching me from the alley entrance with eyes too old for her small face. Her clothes hung off her frame in tatters, and I could count her ribs through the holes in her shirt. I knew hunger, intimately. Knew the way it gnawed at your insides until you couldn't think of anything else. The way it made you small and desperate, and willing to degrade yourself for a single meal. So every morning, I portioned out a bowl of whatever I was serving, soup, rice, noodles, and set it on the corner of my cart. She'd wait until I turned away, maintaining some shred of dignity, before creeping forward to take it. We had an understanding, she and I. 2 invisible people pretending we didn't see each other's brokenness. Still feeding that street rat? Mrs. Chen's voice cut through the morning air, sharp and disapproving. She ran the dumpling stand 2 corners down and considered herself superior because her cart had an actual awning. "You're too soft, girl. That food costs money." I didn't answer. Didn't tell her that the scraps I gave away would have been thrown out anyway. Didn't mention that the girl's grateful silence was sometimes the only human connection I had all day. The morning rush started, if you could call it that. A trickle of workers, a few students from the community college. I moved through the motions with practiced efficiency, ladling soup, counting coins, wiping down surfaces that would never truly be clean. The propane burner hissed its familiar rhythm. Someone's radio played tinny music 3 stalls down. The world continued its indifferent rotation. Then everything changed. The sound reached me first, a deep, powerful purr that didn't belong in this neighborhood. My hands stilled over the pot. Other vendors looked up from their work, conversations dying mid-sentence. Even the usual street noise seemed to hush, as if the city itself was holding its breath. 4 black SUVs rolled down the narrow street with predatory grace, their glossy paint jobs obscene against the grime-covered buildings. These weren't ordinary vehicles. These were the kind that cost more than everyone on this block would earn in a lifetime. Bulletproof glass. Tinted windows so dark they looked like portals to another dimension. Chrome accents that caught the weak morning sun and threw it back like a challenge. They moved in formation, precise and intentional, and my stomach dropped when I realized they were slowing down, right in front of my stall. The street had gone completely silent. Even Mrs. Chen's constant chatter had died. I felt every eye on the block watching, waiting, my heart hammered against my ribs. People like me didn't attract attention from people who owned cars like that. Nothing good ever came from being noticed. The engines cut off in perfect synchronization, and for a moment, nothing happened. Just 4 massive vehicles sitting there like sleeping panthers, their presence warping the reality of the street corner. I could see my own reflection in the nearest one's immaculate paint, a small frightened woman in a dirty apron, utterly out of place. The doors opened. Men emerged from the front and back vehicles. 6 in total, maybe more. They moved with that particular kind of precision that spoke of military training or something darker. Dark suits that fit too well, earpieces barely visible, hands that stayed close to their jackets in a way that made my blood run cold. They weren't looking at me. Not yet. They were scanning, assessing, turning our shabby street corner into a secure perimeter. Then the rear door of the second SUV opened. A shoe touched the pavement first. Black leather, polished to a mirror shine. The kind of shoe that had never stepped in anything unpleasant. Then a leg, encased in charcoal wool, that probably cost more than my entire cart. The man who emerged seemed to unfold from the vehicle, tall and broad-shouldered, moving with an economy of motion that suggested power held in careful check. I couldn't breathe. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp features that looked carved from stone. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been handsome if it weren't so severe, so utterly devoid of softness, but it was his presence that hit me like a physical force. The air around him seemed different, heavier, charged with something dangerous. Everyone on the street had the same reaction. Eyes dropped, shoulders hunched, people suddenly finding reasons to be elsewhere. Predator and prey. The dynamic was that simple, that primal. He buttoned his suit jacket with one hand, a gesture so casual, so ordinary, yet it made me want to run. Then his eyes swept the street, and I understood why people feared men like this. His gaze wasn't just looking, it was cataloging, calculating, stripping away pretense to see what lay beneath. When those eyes landed on me, I stopped breathing entirely. They were dark, almost black, and completely unreadable. He didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't show any expression at all. Just studied me with the kind of attention that made me feel exposed, vulnerable, like he could see every secret I'd ever kept. The moment stretched, impossibly long, while my mind screamed at me to look away, to run, to do anything except stand there like a rabbit frozen in a wolf's sight. Then his attention shifted, just slightly, to the left, to the alley entrance where the little girl stood, clutching her empty bowl, her eyes wide with terror. Something flickered across his face. Too fast to read, too complex to name. One of his men moved, and he raised a hand in a gesture so subtle I almost missed it. The man froze immediately, complete obedience, the kind that came from fear or loyalty or both. The man in the expensive suit took a step forward. Just one. But it was toward my stall, and my hands gripped the edge of my cart so hard my knuckles went white. You. His voice was like smoke over gravel, quiet, controlled, and absolutely terrifying in its calmness. He wasn't asking, wasn't questioning, just stating a fact of my existence. You feed her. It wasn't a question, but my mouth opened anyway, trying to form words that wouldn't come. Up close I could smell him, expensive cologne, the leather of his jacket, and underneath it all, something that reminded me of gun oil and danger. My voice came out as a whisper, broken and pathetic. She's just a child. She was hungry. His eyes narrowed fractionally, studying me, dissecting me. One of his men shifted closer, and I saw it then. The bulge under his jacket, the way his hand hovered near it. These weren't bodyguards. These were killers, dressed in nice suits and following a man who commanded them with nothing but silence and subtle gestures. "How long?" he asked. 2 words. Simple. But the weight behind them suggested that my answer mattered in ways I couldn't begin to understand. 3 weeks, I managed. Every morning, just scraps. Food that would go to waste anyway. Something changed in his expression. Not softening. Men like this didn't soften, but a shift, like tectonic plates moving beneath an earthquake. He glanced at the little girl again, and I saw her press herself further into the shadows, trembling. Then he looked back at me, and I realized with dawning horror that I'd made a terrible mistake. That feeding a homeless child had somehow caught the attention of someone dangerous, someone powerful, someone who didn't belong in my world of cracked pavement and aluminum pots. He reached into his jacket. I flinched, couldn't help it, and pulled out a black leather wallet. My mind was screaming at me to refuse whatever he was about to offer, that nothing was free, that people like him didn't do favors without expecting something in return. But he didn't pull out money. He pulled out a card. Simple. White. With a phone number embossed in black and nothing else. "Tomorrow morning," he said, his voice still that terrible calm. "You will close your stall. A car will come for you. You will get in it. It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a command. It was simply a statement of what would happen, as inevitable as sunrise. I can't. The words tumbled out, panic making me stupid. This is my business. I can't just close. You will be compensated. He placed the card on my cart with the kind of precision that made it feel like a contract being signed, generously. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. Why would you? I don't understand. For the first time, something that might have been emotion crossed his face, but it was gone so fast I couldn't name it. Replaced by that impenetrable mask of control. Because that child, he said, nodding toward the alley where the girl was trying to disappear into the bricks, is my daughter. The world tilted. His daughter. The homeless girl I'd been feeding scraps was the daughter of a man who traveled with armed escorts and vehicles that cost more than most houses. The girl in rags and dirt was connected to this monument of power and danger standing at my broken food cart. I started, but he was already turning away, the conversation over because he'd said everything he intended to say. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Don't make me send someone to convince you. The threat was delivered with the same casual tone someone might use to discuss the weather, which somehow made it infinitely more terrifying. He walked back to his vehicle with that same controlled grace, and his men moved with him like a choreographed dance. Doors opened and closed. Engines purred to life. And then they were gone, leaving only the lingering scent of expensive cologne and the terrible weight of that white card on my cart. I stood there, shaking, while the street slowly came back to life around me. Mrs. Chen was staring at me with a mixture of horror and fascination. Other vendors whispered behind their hands. The girl had vanished completely, disappeared into whatever holes homeless children hide in. I looked down at the card, at the number that seemed to pulse with dark promise. What had I done? What simple act of kindness had I performed that had caught the attention of a man who radiated danger like other people radiated warmth? His daughter. How did a man like that lose track of his own child? Why was she living on the streets, eating my scraps, if she belonged to someone who could buy and sell this entire neighborhood without blinking? My hands were still shaking when I picked up the card. The paper was heavy, expensive, real. This was happening. Tomorrow morning, I would have to make a choice. Get in that car, or refuse a man who clearly wasn't accustomed to being refused. The sun climbed higher, and I went through the motions of my day. But everything felt wrong now, contaminated. That brief encounter had cracked open something in my carefully maintained invisibility, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to seal it closed again. 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, a car would come, and I would have to decide whether curiosity, fear, or simple survival instinct would win. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The card sat on the overturned crate I used as a nightstand in my cramped room above the Chinese bakery, glowing white in the darkness like a small rectangle of damnation. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, that carved stone expression. Those eyes that had looked at me like I was a puzzle he was already solving. My room was barely large enough for the mattress on the floor and the hot plate where I boiled water for instant noodles. Pipes groaned in the walls, cockroaches skittered across the cracked linoleum. Through the paper-thin walls, I could hear Mr. Wang snoring and the couple next door fighting in rapid Cantonese. This was my life. Small, invisible, safe in its insignificance. Until yesterday. I turned over for the 100th time, the thin blanket tangling around my legs. His daughter. The words kept echoing in my head, refusing to make sense. That little girl with the hollowed cheeks and frightened eyes was connected to a man who moved through the world like a shark through water. Silent, powerful, utterly in control. What did he want from me? The question gnawed at my insides worse than hunger ever had. Men like that didn't summon people like me for good reasons. They didn't compensate generously without expecting something in return. And that threat, delivered so casually, "Don't make me send someone to convince you," rattled around my skull like broken glass. At 4 a.m, I gave up on sleep. I moved through my morning routine in a daze. Cold water from the communal bathroom down the hall. The same worn clothes I'd patched a dozen times, my hair pulled back with shaking hands. In the cracked mirror above the rust-stained sink, I looked like a ghost. Dark circles under my eyes, skin too pale. A woman disappearing into her own fear. By 6, I was at my cart, going through the motions I'd performed thousands of times. Light the propane burner, fill the pot with water, add the bones and scraps I'd collected. The familiar rhythm should have been comforting, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. The street woke up around me with its usual sounds, shutters rolling up, vendors calling out greetings, the rumble of delivery trucks, but everything felt different now, tainted by anticipation and dread. I kept looking up, scanning for black SUVs, for men in expensive suits, for any sign that yesterday hadn't been some kind of fever dream. The little girl didn't come. I set out her usual bowl anyway, placed it on the corner of my cart where she always found it. But the alley entrance remained empty. 7 o'clock came and went. Workers shuffled past, bought their breakfast, moved on with their lives. The bowl sat there, growing cold, steam rising and dissipating into the morning air. She knew. Somehow, she knew not to come today. At 7:45, Mrs. Chen appeared at my elbow, making me jump. "You're closing?" She'd been watching me pack up my cart with the kind of avid curiosity that made my skin crawl. "In the middle of morning rush? Girl, have you lost your mind?" "I have somewhere to be," I muttered, not meeting her eyes. What else could I say? That I'd been summoned by a man who traveled with armed guards and made the air itself feel dangerous. This about those cars yesterday? Her voice dropped to a whisper, as if speaking too loudly about it might summon them back. "Everyone's talking. Zhang from the electronics stall says that man is..." She leaned closer, her breath smelling of garlic and secrets. "They say he runs the entire Eastern District. Everything. The gambling, the protection, I don't want to know." I cut her off, my voice sharper than intended, because she was confirming what I'd already suspected, already feared. Not just wealthy, not just powerful, dangerous in the way that destroyed lives without a second thought. A crime lord. A gang boss. The kind of man whose name people whispered because speaking it aloud might draw his attention, and I'd accidentally fed his daughter for 3 weeks. At 7:58, I locked my cart with hands that wouldn't stay steady. The street felt different. Watching, waiting. Other vendors had found reasons to be near their stalls, pretending not to stare at me. Word had spread. Everyone knew something was about to happen. The black Mercedes pulled up at exactly 8 o'clock. Not the SUVs from yesterday, but the effect was the same. The car was obscene in its perfection. Gleaming paint, windows tinted so dark they looked solid, chrome that caught the morning light. It glided to a stop in front of my cart, as silently as a predator stalking prey. The driver's door opened, and a man emerged. Not the boss from yesterday, but cut from the same cloth. Dark suit, earpiece, eyes that scanned the street with professional efficiency. He was older, maybe 50, with silver threading through his hair and a scar along his jawline that spoke of a violent past. Miss Song. Not a question. He knew who I was, had probably known everything about me before the car even arrived. "I'm here to escort you." My feet felt rooted to the pavement. This was real. This was happening. I could refuse, could turn around and disappear into the warren of streets and alleys I knew so well. But the memory of that quiet threat echoed in my mind. "Don't make me send someone to convince you." "Where?" My voice came out steady, which surprised me. "Where are you taking me?" "Somewhere safe." His expression didn't change, but something in his tone suggested he understood my fear. "You have my word. No harm will come to you today. Today." The qualifier wasn't lost on me. He opened the rear door, and I caught a glimpse of the interior. Leather seats the color of cream, wood paneling, space that felt obscene compared to the cramped quarters of my life. This car probably had better living conditions than my room. I looked back at my cart one last time. My entire world, contained in a few square feet of dented metal and dreams that had died years ago. If I got in that car, something would change. I could feel it in my bones, the way animals sense earthquakes before they hit. But what choice did I really have? I climbed in. The door closed with a sound like a vault ceiling, and suddenly the street noise disappeared. The car was soundproofed, cocooning me in silence so complete it made my ears ring. The leather seat was soft enough to sink into, and I perched on the edge, afraid to touch anything, afraid that existing in this space might somehow contaminate me. The driver got in without a word, and we pulled away from the curb. I watched through the tinted windows as my street corner receded. Mrs. Chen staring open-mouthed, other vendors clustering together to gossip, my cart sitting there like an abandoned ship. We drove through the city, leaving the industrial district behind. The buildings changed, became taller, cleaner, more expensive. We passed shopping districts I'd never dared to enter, restaurants with prices I couldn't comprehend. The city I thought I knew revealed itself as just a small, forgotten corner of something much larger. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to a building that made my stomach drop. It was glass and steel, reaching toward the sky like a monument to power. The kind of place where people like me only entered through service entrances, if at all. A doorman in a uniform that probably cost more than my monthly rent stood at attention. Other luxury cars lined the curved driveway. "This way, please." The driver had materialized at my door, hand extended to help me out. I stepped onto pavement so clean I could see my reflection in it, feeling utterly out of place in my patched clothes and worn shoes. People in expensive suits walked past, and I could feel their eyes sliding over me, dismissing me as someone who'd taken a wrong turn. We entered through the main doors, not the service entrance, which somehow made it worse. The lobby was all marble and gold accents, with a ceiling 3 stories high and a chandelier that probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. My footsteps echoed, announcing my inadequacy to everyone present. The elevator was made of glass, and I watched the city shrink beneath us as we rose. 20th floor, 30th, 40th. The numbers kept climbing until I lost count, until we were so high that the streets below looked like toys. We stopped at the top floor. The doors opened directly into a penthouse apartment that stole what little breath I had left. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the entire city spread out like a kingdom. The furniture looked like art. Everything was white and chrome and glass. So clean and perfect it didn't seem real. And standing by the windows, silhouetted against the morning light, was him. He turned as I entered, and the impact of his presence hit me all over again. In the daylight streaming through those massive windows, I could see details I'd missed yesterday. The precise cut of his suit, the watch on his wrist that probably cost more than my food card 100 times over, the way he held himself, like a man who'd never doubted his right to occupy space. Miss Song. He said my name like he was tasting it, testing how it felt in his mouth. "Thank you for coming." As if I'd had a choice. "You're wondering why you're here." He gestured to a white leather chair that looked too expensive to sit in. "Please." I sat, perching on the edge again, my hands twisted in my lap. He remained standing, maintaining the height advantage, the power dynamic. Everything about this was calculated, controlled. He moved to a sideboard and poured amber liquid into a crystal glass. "It's 8 a.m, I said before I could stop myself. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement of something. Whiskey is appropriate at any hour when discussing family matters. He took a sip, his eyes never leaving mine. "You fed my daughter. I didn't know she was yours," the words tumbled out. "She was just a hungry child. I would have fed any—" "I know." He cut me off, his voice still that terrible calm. "I've had people watching this street for 2 weeks. Watching her. Watching you." He set the glass down with a soft click. "You never asked her for anything, never tried to use her. Fed her. Just—" The admission that I'd been under surveillance should have terrified me more than it did, but I was already so far beyond normal fear that it just added to the surreal quality of the morning. Why was she on the streets? The question burst out before I could consider whether asking it might be dangerous. If she's your daughter, why was she living like that? Starving? Alone? Something dark crossed his face, and for the first time, I saw emotion crack through his controlled exterior. Rage. Barely leashed, burning just beneath the surface. Her mother took her. The words came out clipped, precise, each one costing him something. Took her and ran. Thought she could hide. Thought she could use my own daughter as leverage, as a bargaining chip in games she didn't understand. He turned back to the window, his shoulders rigid. She left May on the streets when she realized I was closing in. Abandoned her like trash rather than let me find them together. May. The little girl had a name now, and somehow that made everything more real, more painful. "Where is she now?" I asked. "May, is she safe?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something shift in his expression. Surprise, maybe, that my first concern was the child rather than my own safety. "She's in the next room, with the doctor getting proper care." He paused. "She won't speak. Hasn't said a word since we found her yesterday. The trauma..." His jaw clenched. "But she pointed to you. In the photographs we showed her of the street. Pointed to you and held up her bowl." My throat tightened. She just needed someone to see her, to acknowledge she existed. "Yes." The single word carried weight I didn't fully understand. He moved closer, and I had to fight the urge to press myself back into the chair. "Which brings us to why you're here." This was it. The real reason. The price for whatever compensation he'd promised. May needs stability, routine. Someone she trusts. He stopped directly in front of me, and I had to crane my neck to meet his eyes. Someone who showed her kindness without expecting anything in return. Someone who saw a child, not an opportunity. "I don't understand. I want you to take care of her." The world tilted again, reality shifting beneath my feet. "What?" "Move into this building. A separate apartment, fully furnished and secured. Your job will be to provide May with care, with stability, with the gentle presence she needs to heal from what her mother did." His voice remained calm, but I could hear steel underneath. "You'll be compensated well enough that you'll never need to worry about money again. All I ask is that you give my daughter what she needs most, someone who sees her as a person, not as a pawn." I opened my mouth, closed it, tried to process what he was offering. Leave my life behind, live in luxury, care for a traumatized child. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "Why me?" I managed. "I'm nobody. You could hire professionals, nannies with actual experience. She doesn't trust professionals." He crouched down, bringing himself to eye level, and the gesture was so unexpected I forgot to breathe. "She trusts you, the woman who fed her when she was invisible to everyone else. That's not something money can buy." His eyes were so dark, so intense, and this close I could see the faint scar along his temple, the exhaustion he hid beneath that controlled exterior. This was a man who'd been searching for his daughter, who'd probably torn the city apart looking for her. And now he was here, asking, not ordering, actually asking for my help. "I need time," I whispered, "to think. It's too much. I can't just..." "You can." He stood, towering over me again. "Because the alternative is going back to that street corner, knowing that you walked away from a child who needs you. Knowing that the only person she reached for in her trauma was you, and you chose a dented cart and a life of invisibility over helping her heal." The manipulation was skillful, brutal in its simplicity. He knew exactly what strings to pull, exactly how to make the choice feel like no choice at all. "Can I see her?" The words escaped before I realized I'd decided. Before I agree to anything. "Can I see May?" He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Follow me." We walked through the penthouse, past rooms that looked like magazine spreads, until we reached a door at the end of a hallway. He opened it quietly, and I saw her. May was curled up on a bed that looked like a cloud, wearing clean clothes that actually fit her, her hair washed and brushed. A woman in medical scrubs sat nearby, making notes on a tablet. But May's eyes were fixed on the window, staring out at the city with that same haunted expression I'd seen in the alley. Then she saw me. Her whole body went rigid, and for a heartbeat, I thought she was afraid, but then she scrambled off the bed and ran. Actually, ran straight to me. Small arms wrapped around my waist, her face pressed against my stomach, and I felt her trembling. My hands hovered over her, uncertain, before settling gently on her back. She was so small, so fragile. and she was holding on to me like I was the only solid thing in a world that had taught her nothing was safe. Over her head, I met his eyes. And I saw it there. The ruthless calculation, yes, but also something else. Something that looked almost like hope. Though I didn't think men like him trafficked in such soft emotions. I was trapped. Not by threats or force, but by the weight of a small child clinging to me, seeking comfort from someone who was barely surviving herself. By the knowledge that walking away would haunt me forever. Okay, I whispered, and felt my entire life shift beneath the weight of that single word. I'll do it. His expression didn't change, but I saw his shoulders relax fractionally. Good. I'll have my people collect your belongings from your current residence. You'll move in today. Today, of course. Men like him didn't wait. What about my cart? The question sounded absurd in this palace of glass and marble, but it was all I had. Donate it. Sell it. Keep it. I don't care. He was already pulling out his phone, messages firing off with efficient taps. You won't need it anymore. Just like that, my old life was being erased, packaged up and filed away as irrelevant. I should have felt relief, escape from poverty, from hunger, from invisibility. But all I felt was the ground disappearing beneath my feet, and the terrible certainty that I'd just made a deal with someone far more dangerous than I could comprehend. May pulled back, looking up at me with those ancient eyes, and something in my chest cracked open. Whatever I'd just agreed to, whatever price I'd eventually have to pay, I was committed now. For better or worse, my life belonged to the man standing behind me, radiating control and danger like other people radiated warmth. The apartment he gave me was on the 38th floor, 4 levels below his penthouse. When the driver, whose name I learned was Chen, opened the door, I stood frozen in the hallway, unable to process what I was seeing. This wasn't an apartment. It was a dream rendered in marble and glass. The kind of space I'd only glimpsed in magazines left behind at cafes. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, making me feel like I was floating above the world I'd known. The living room alone was larger than the entire building I'd lived in above the bakery. Miss Song? Chen's voice was patient. Would you like me to show you around? I nodded, mute, and followed him through rooms that seemed to multiply endlessly. A kitchen with appliances I didn't recognize. A bedroom with a bed so large I could have fit 5 people in it comfortably. A bathroom with a tub that looked like it belonged in a spa. All white marble and gold fixtures. Your belongings will arrive within the hour, Chen said. Though Mr. Zhao has arranged for a stylist to come tomorrow. He thought you might appreciate new clothes more suited to your new position. New position. As if I'd been hired for a corporate job, rather than pulled into whatever this was. Where's May? I asked. The apartment was beautiful, but it felt empty. Sterile. Wrong. The medical staff is still with her upstairs. Mr. Zhao thought you might need time to settle in first. Chen's expression softened slightly. The child has been through considerable trauma. The doctors want to ensure she's physically healthy before establishing a routine. I nodded, but my hands were shaking again. The reality of what I'd agreed to was starting to sink in. I was going to be responsible for a traumatized 8-year-old who wouldn't speak, whose mother had abandoned her on the streets, whose father was a crime lord who commanded fear with a glance. What did I know about caring for children? About trauma? About any of this? Mr. Zhao will join you for dinner this evening, Chen continued. 7 o'clock. He wants to discuss May's care plan and your responsibilities. Of course he did. Everything controlled, everything planned. I wondered if he ever did anything spontaneous, if he ever let himself be anything other than this monument of cold efficiency. Chen left, and I was alone with my thoughts in this overwhelming space. I walked to the windows and looked down at the city spread below. Somewhere down there was my street corner, my cart, my old life. From up here it was invisible. Just another forgotten corner of a city that never stopped moving. My phone buzzed. A cheap device that looked absurd in this luxury apartment. A text from an unknown number. Your building access code is 8273. Use the private elevator. Don't be late for dinner. ZZ for Zhao. Even his texts were commands. The next few hours passed in a blur. My belongings arrived in a single cardboard box, everything I owned in the world fitting into a space smaller than the bathroom closet. The contrast was almost funny, almost. I showered in that enormous bathroom, watching street grime swirl down a drain that probably cost more than a month's rent at my old place. The hot water felt like a luxury I didn't deserve, and I stayed under the spray longer than necessary, trying to wash away the feeling that I was being slowly erased. At 6:30, I stood in front of my pathetic collection of clothes, trying to decide what to wear to dinner with a crime lord. Everything was stained or patched or both. Eventually, I chose the least terrible option, black pants with only one visible repair, and a shirt that had faded from navy to something closer to gray. The private elevator required a key card Chen had left on the counter. I rode it up to the penthouse, my stomach churning with nerves, and emerged into that vast space of white and glass. He was waiting in the dining room, standing by a table set for two. He'd changed from his suit into something more casual, dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. It should have made him look more relaxed, more human. Instead, it just revealed the corded muscle of his forearms, the strength he usually kept hidden beneath expensive tailoring. Sit. He gestured to a chair, and I obeyed, hating how automatic the response was. A woman appeared from the kitchen, middle-aged, wearing an apron, carrying plates of food that smelled incredible. She set them down without a word and disappeared again. The meal was simple but elegant. Grilled fish, steamed vegetables, rice, nothing like the elaborate feast I'd expected. "May won't eat rich foods," he said, as if reading my thoughts. "Too much time surviving on scraps. Her stomach can't handle it yet, so we eat simply." The casual mention of his daughter's suffering, delivered in that same controlled tone, made something twist in my chest. I picked up my chopsticks with trembling hands. "The doctors say she's malnourished but otherwise healthy," he continued, taking a bite of fish. "No signs of physical abuse, thank God. But the psychological damage..." He paused, jaw clenching. "That will take time." "What happened?" I asked quietly. "With her mother?" His eyes lifted to mine, dark and unreadable. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Lynn was my accountant, smart, beautiful, ambitious. I trusted her with my businesses, with my finances, with my daughter. His voice went cold. She was stealing, had been for over a year. When I discovered it, she panicked, took May and ran. But why abandon her? Why not just... Because Lynn was meeting her lover, a man she'd planned to run away with using my money. The words came out flat, emotionless. He didn't want a child complicating their escape. So she left May on the streets and disappeared. He took a sip of wine. "We found Lynn 3 days ago. She's been dealt with." The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. Dealt with. I didn't want to know what that meant. And the father? May's biological father? Dead. One word. Final. Car accident when she was 2. I married Lynn a year later, adopted May legally. She's my daughter in every way that matters. I looked down at my plate, processing this. A crime lord who'd taken in his dead employee's child, who'd married the woman and claimed the girl as his own. It didn't fit the monster narrative, which somehow made him more dangerous, not less. "Why do you care?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "You could hire anyone. Why does it matter if May trusts me specifically?" He set down his chopsticks with deliberate precision. "Because trust is rare in my world. Everyone wants something. Everyone has an angle." His eyes pinned me in place. "But you fed a starving child expecting nothing in return. That kind of genuine goodness is so rare I almost didn't believe the reports." "I'm not good," I said. I was hungry once. I know what it feels like to be invisible." "Yes." Something flickered in his expression. "I know. I had you investigated thoroughly. Parents dead in a factory fire when you were 16. No other family. Been on your own ever since. Never arrested. Never involved in anything illegal. Just surviving, day by day, without asking for help from anyone. The casual violation of my privacy should have angered me, but I was too tired to feel anything except a dull acceptance. Of course he'd investigated. Men like him didn't take chances. May will stay in the apartment next to yours, he continued. Connected by an adjoining door, medical staff will visit daily for the first month. You'll be responsible for her meals, her routine, her emotional care. I'll visit when I can, but my business requires, he paused. I'm not always available. What exactly is your business? I asked. Though I wasn't sure I wanted to know, his smile was sharp, humorless. Better you don't ask questions you don't want answers to. Just know that I own this city in ways the government pretends don't exist. And that ownership comes with enemies who would love to use May against me. The implication settled over me like a shroud. This wasn't just about caring for a traumatized child. This was about keeping her safe from people who might hurt her to get to him. You'll have security, he said. Chen will coordinate. You don't leave the building without approval. You don't talk to anyone about May or our arrangement. You don't... I'm a prisoner. The words came out flat. You're protected. He leaned back, studying me. There's a difference. Though I suppose it might feel the same to someone who values freedom above comfort. He wasn't wrong. The golden cage was still a cage, no matter how beautiful the bars. I'll do this for May, I said quietly. Not for you. Not for the money or the apartment or any of it. For that little girl who held on to me like I was the only safe thing in her world. Something changed in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. That's exactly why I chose you. He stood, dinner apparently over. Chen will brief you on security protocols tomorrow. The stylist will arrive at 9, and May will move into her apartment the day after. Once the doctors clear her, he started to walk away, then paused. One more thing. You call me Zhao. Not Mr. Zhao, not sir. Just Zhao. We're going to be in each other's lives for the foreseeable future. Formality is unnecessary. Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me alone with half-eaten food and the crushing weight of my new reality. I was trapped in a penthouse prison, responsible for a child I barely knew, bound to a dangerous man whose world I didn't understand. And somewhere in the midst of all this fear and confusion, I realized I couldn't remember the last time someone had said my name with anything other than dismissal. He'd called me Miss Song like it mattered. Like I was a person worth acknowledging. It was such a small thing, but after years of invisibility, even that felt dangerous. May moved into the apartment next to mine on a gray Thursday morning, accompanied by a doctor, 2 nurses, and Zhao hovering in the background like a dark shadow. I watched from my doorway as they settled her into a space that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never actually met a child. All white furniture and glass surfaces. Beautiful, but cold. The little girl clutched a worn stuffed rabbit, the only possession she'd brought from wherever they'd been keeping her. Her eyes found mine across the hallway, and I saw relief flicker across her face. Come here, sweetheart, I said softly, and she didn't hesitate. She crossed the distance between us and pressed herself against my side. That rabbit crushed between us. Zhao's expression shifted as he watched, something almost like pain crossing his features before that mask of control slammed back into place. I'll leave you to get her settled, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Chen is outside if you need anything. Then he was gone, and I was alone with a traumatized child who wouldn't speak and a security guard lurking in the hallway. The first week was harder than I'd imagined. May followed me everywhere, a silent shadow who panicked if I was out of her sight for more than a few minutes. She wouldn't sleep in her own bed. The first night, I found her curled up outside my door at 3 a.m, shaking. After that, she slept in my bed, that rabbit clutched to her chest, her small body pressed against mine like she was afraid I'd disappear. She wouldn't eat unless I ate first, wouldn't bathe unless I stayed in the bathroom. Wouldn't do anything without constant reassurance that I wasn't leaving. The medical staff came daily, poking and prodding, asking questions she wouldn't answer. I watched her shrink into herself during these visits, becoming smaller and more fragile, until I finally snapped at the lead doctor. She needs space, I said, my voice sharper than intended. You're treating her like a problem to solve instead of a child who needs time. The doctor, a severe woman named Dr. Chen, raised an eyebrow. We're trying to help her, then help her by giving her room to breathe. After that, the visits became less frequent, and slowly, painfully slowly, May began to relax, Zhao visited every evening at 7, like clockwork. He'd arrive in his expensive suits, shed his jacket in the entryway, and sit with May for exactly 1 hour. Sometimes they'd watch television together in silence. Sometimes he'd read to her from books he brought. Children's stories that sounded strange in his deep, controlled voice. Sometimes they'd just sit, existing in the same space. He never pushed her to speak, never demanded affection, just was there. Constant. Reliable. I'd watch from the kitchen, pretending to prepare dinner while actually studying this strange dynamic. The most dangerous man I'd ever met. Sitting cross-legged on the floor with a mute 8-year-old. Reading about magical kingdoms and brave princesses. It didn't fit. None of this fit. "You're staring," he said one evening. Not looking up from the book. I flushed, caught. It's strange. Seeing you like this." "Like what?" He turned a page, his voice mild. "Human." That made him look up. May had fallen asleep against his shoulder, her rabbit tucked under her chin. His hand rested on her back, protective, gentle. "You thought I was a monster. I thought you were dangerous. I am dangerous." He said it simply, a statement of fact. But not to her. Never to her. Something in my chest tightened. I moved closer, kneeling beside them. "She trusts you. Even after everything, she shouldn't." His jaw clenched. I failed her. Let Lynn take her. Didn't realize what was happening until it was almost too late. "You found her. You brought her home." She'd been living on the streets for 3 weeks, eating scraps, sleeping in alleys. His voice went cold, but I heard the self-loathing underneath. What kind of father allows that to happen? The kind who's human enough to make mistakes. I reached out without thinking, my hand covering his where it rested on May's back. "She's safe now. That's what matters." He stared at my hand on his, and I realized what I'd done, touched him. Offered comfort to a man who probably had people killed for less presumptuous gestures. I started to pull away, but his other hand caught mine, holding it in place. "Thank you." 2 words. Quiet, almost vulnerable. For taking care of her. For being what she needs. His hand was warm, calloused in unexpected places. Our eyes met, and something shifted in the air between us. Something dangerous and electric that made my breath catch. Then May stirred, and the moment shattered. He released my hand and stood carefully, lifting her with an ease that spoke of practice. "I'll put her to bed." I watched him carry her to my bedroom, because she still wouldn't sleep in her own, and tuck her in with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man who radiated controlled violence. He kissed her forehead, whispered something I couldn't hear, and then he was striding past me toward the door. "Zhao," I called out, and he paused. "You're a good father. Whatever else you are, you're good to her." His shoulders tensed. "Don't make the mistake of thinking I'm good, Anya." My name in his mouth felt intimate, dangerous. I'm not. I just love my daughter enough to pretend. Then he was gone, leaving me with the echo of my name and the lingering warmth of his hand on mine. The weeks blurred together. May began to smile, small, tentative things that felt like victories. She started drawing, filling page after page with images of flowers and sunshine and, always, a woman and a small girl holding hands. Not her and her mother, her and me. The stylist came and went, leaving behind a wardrobe I'd never have chosen for myself. Soft sweaters, comfortable pants. Nothing as expensive as Zhao's clothes, but nicer than anything I'd ever owned. I caught him watching me one evening when I wore a blue sweater, something heating in his gaze before he looked away. Chen taught me the security protocols. Cameras everywhere, panic buttons, codes and procedures. The building was a fortress, and we were locked inside it, but it didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like safety, until the night everything changed. I woke to May screaming, not crying, screaming, a sound of pure terror that had me out of bed and running before I was fully conscious. She was sitting up, eyes wide and unseeing, caught in a nightmare that had her clawing at her own arms. "May, sweetheart, it's okay." I reached for her, and she lashed out, connecting with my cheek hard enough to make me see stars. "Don't let her find me." The words burst out of her, the first she'd spoken in months. "Don't let Mama find me. She'll leave me again. May, listen to me. I grabbed her hands, holding them firm but gentle. Your mama can't hurt you anymore. You're safe. I promise you're safe. She collapsed against me, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I held her, rocking, whispering reassurances that felt inadequate against the magnitude of her fear. The door burst open. Zhao stood there in pajama pants and nothing else, his hair disheveled, eyes wild. Behind him, Chen had his gun drawn. What happened? Zhao demanded. Nightmare, I managed. She spoke, Zhao. She finally spoke. He was across the room in 3 strides, kneeling beside the bed. May? Baby, look at me. She turned her tear-stained face to him, and her voice came out small, broken. Is Mama gone? Really gone? His expression cracked, raw pain bleeding through. Yes. She can't hurt you anymore, I promise. You promised before. The accusation in her small voice was devastating. You said she loved me. You said she'd never leave. I was wrong. He pulled her into his arms, and I saw his hands shaking. I was so wrong, and I'm sorry. But this I can promise. And Anya and I will never let anyone hurt you again. Anya and I. As if we were a unit, a team. May's sobs gradually quieted, and she fell into an exhausted sleep between us. Zhao sat on one side of the bed, me on the other, both of us afraid to move and wake her. Thank you, he said finally, his voice rough. For being here, for knowing what to do. I didn't know what to do, I looked down at May's sleeping face. I just held her. Our eyes met across the bed, and I saw something in his gaze that terrified me more than his reputation ever had. Want, need, the kind of dangerous attraction that could destroy what little stability we'd built. I should go, he said, but didn't move. Yes, I agreed, but didn't look away. The moment stretched, heavy with things we couldn't say, shouldn't want. Then he stood and walked to the door, paused, looked back. She spoke because of you, because she feels safe with you. His voice was low, intense. Thank you for giving her that, for giving us both that. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with a sleeping child, and the dangerous realization that I was falling for a man I should fear, a man who could destroy me with a word. A man I was starting to trust despite every instinct screaming that it was a mistake. 3 months passed like a dream I was afraid to wake from. May bloomed. That was the only word for it. She started talking in full sentences, laughing at cartoons, asking endless questions about everything. The haunted look in her eyes faded, replaced by something that looked almost like childhood. She started calling me Anya G, Sister Anya, and the term of endearment made my chest ache every time. And Zhao became a constant presence in our lives. His evening visits stretched longer. 7 o'clock became 8, then 9. He started staying for dinner, the 3 of us eating together like some strange approximation of a family. He taught May to play chess, his patient explanations at odds with the ruthless man I knew he was in the outside world. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me across the table, his dark eyes intense with something that made my skin feel too tight. The touches became more frequent, his hand on my lower back as he passed, fingers brushing mine when we both reached for May. Once, when I stumbled on the carpet, he caught me against his chest, and I felt his heart racing as fast as mine before he set me carefully away. We were dancing around something dangerous, both of us knowing it, but neither willing to name it, until the night Chen knocked on my door at midnight. Miss Song. His face was grave. There's been a situation. Mr. Zhao requests your presence upstairs. Immediately. My heart dropped. May is sleeping. I'll watch her personally. But you need to come now. I followed him to the penthouse, my mind racing through terrible possibilities. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, I found Zhao standing by the windows, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, a glass of whiskey clutched in his hand. Leave us, he said to Chen without turning around. The door closed and we were alone. What's wrong? I moved closer, fear making my voice shake. What happened? He turned, and I saw it in his face. fury barely contained, violence simmering just beneath the surface. Someone tried to get to May today. The world tilted. What? A woman approached her school. He'd enrolled May in a private academy 2 weeks ago, with security so tight it felt like a fortress. Claimed to be her aunt, had photographs, documents. It was sophisticated, professional. But May's safe. Because I have good people. He drained the whiskey, set the glass down with controlled precision. But they found her, Anya. My enemies know about May, which means they know about you. The implication settled over me like ice water. I'd been so focused on the bubble we'd built, this strange, safe world, that I'd forgotten what existed outside it. The danger, the violence, the people who would hurt a child to make a point. I'm doubling your security, he continued. You and May don't leave this building without my explicit approval. Not for school, not for anything. I'm bringing tutors here. You're trapping us. The words came out sharper than intended. Locking us away like I should have done from the beginning. He crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, and suddenly he was too close, his presence overwhelming. I was careless. Thought the happiness I saw in both of you was worth the risk, but I won't gamble with your safety. Either of you. Zhao, do you understand what they'll do if they get their hands on you? His voice dropped, becoming something dark and terrible. What they'll do to hurt me. You and May are the only things in this world He stopped, jaw clenching. The only things that matter. The confession hung between us, raw and devastating. I stared up at him, seeing past the control to the fear beneath. He was terrified. This man who commanded an empire built on violence was afraid of losing us. Then teach me, I said. The words surprised us both. Teach me to protect myself, to protect May. Don't just lock us away. Make us strong enough to survive in your world. Something shifted in his expression. That's not a world you want to be part of. I'm already part of it. I stepped closer, closing the gap between us. The moment I fed your daughter, the moment I agreed to this, I became part of it. So stop trying to protect me from reality and help me face it. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the war happening behind his eyes. Then his hand came up, fingers threading through my hair, tilting my face up to his. You're remarkable, he whispered. Brave and foolish and completely remarkable. Zhao. He kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was months of tension releasing all at once, desperate and consuming. His other arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me against him, and I melted into it despite every rational thought screaming that this was a mistake. His mouth was demanding, claiming, and I kissed him back with equal hunger, my hands fisting in his shirt. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. I can't offer you a normal life, he said, his voice rough. I can't promise safety or peace or any of the things you deserve. I don't want normal. The truth of it shocked me. I want this. You, May, this strange, complicated thing we've built. Even knowing what I am, what I do? I know you're dangerous. My hand slid up his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my palms. I know you've done terrible things, but I also know you read bedtime stories to your daughter, that you make sure we eat healthy meals, that you look at me like I'm something precious instead of invisible. His grip tightened. You are precious, both of you. Which is why I need to keep you safe, even if it means we'll be safer together. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. You, me, and May. A real family. Not just people playing roles. A family. He tested the word like it was foreign. I don't know how to do that. How to be normal. Good thing I don't need normal. I smiled and watched something in him soften. I just need you to stop pushing me away. He kissed me again. Slower this time. Tender in a way that made my chest ache. When he pulled back, his thumb traced my cheekbone. I love you, he said simply. I've been falling in love with you since I watched you feed my daughter without expecting anything in return. Since I saw you choose kindness when the world had given you every reason to be bitter. Tears burned my eyes. I love you too, even though you're terrifying and controlling and completely impossible. He laughed. An actual laugh, the sound rusty from disuse. We're going to have to tell May. She already knows. I thought of the drawings. Always the three of us together. Children see things adults try to hide. Then we do this properly. He stepped back, straightening his shirt, becoming businesslike even as his eyes stayed warm. I'll have my lawyers draw up documents. You'll be listed as May's legal guardian if anything happens to me. You'll have access to accounts, properties, everything you need to keep her safe. Zhao, that's not necessary. It is. His voice went hard. My world is dangerous. I have enemies who would love to see me fall. If something happens, I need to know you and May will be protected. That you'll have the resources to disappear if you need to. The reminder of reality was sobering, but I nodded. Okay. And you'll let Chen train you. Self-defense, weapons, everything. He cupped my face in his hands. I'll give you the tools to survive and pray to every god I don't believe in that you never need them. 6 months later, I stood in May's new bedroom. We'd moved to a house outside the city, something with a yard and space to breathe, and watched her play with the dog Zhao had brought home last week. A massive German shepherd named Bear, who followed her everywhere. Zhao's arms wrapped around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. Happy? Terrified, I admitted, but happy. He'd kept his promise. Chen trained me 3 times a week. I could shoot, fight, identify threats. The naive street vendor was gone, replaced by someone harder, more aware, but not broken. Never broken. The wedding planner called, he murmured against my neck. Wants to know about flowers. We were getting married in 2 weeks. A small ceremony, just us and May and a handful of Zhao's most trusted people. Nothing fancy. Just a declaration that this strange, impossible family was real. White roses, I said, May's favorite. May's favorite it is. He turned me in his arms, and the love in his eyes still took my breath away. I never thought I'd have this, a real home. People to come back to who see me as something other than dangerous. You are dangerous. I traced the scar on his temple. The one I'd learned came from a rival's attack years ago. But you're also mine, yours, he agreed, and kissed me softly. Always yours. May's laughter rang out as Bear licked her face, and I felt something settle in my chest. Peace. After years of invisibility, of hunger, of merely surviving, I'd found a place where I belonged. It wasn't the life I'd imagined. It came with security protocols and bulletproof cars, and the knowledge that Zhao's enemies would always be circling. But it also came with love, fierce, protective, unconditional love from a man who'd learned to be human again, and a child who'd taught us both what family really meant. Anya ji, Baba, come play, May called out, using the word for father naturally now, all traces of her trauma fading into memory. Zhao took my hand, and together we walked into the sunshine, into the yard where our daughter was laughing, into the future we'd built from broken pieces and unexpected kindness. I'd been a roadside food seller feeding a homeless girl. Now I was home, and that made all the danger, all the fear, all the impossible complications worth it. Because love, real, transformative love, was worth any price. Even if it came wrapped in darkness and danger. Even if it required becoming someone new. We were a family. Broken, strange, held together by choice rather than blood. But we were real. And we were finally, beautifully free.